What's new, 802? I'm Becca Hammond, and you're listening to Vermont Talks. Vermont Talks may include graphic or explicit content. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Vermont Talks. It is Saturday, the 17th of May in 2025, and I'm here with half of Taken Alive. James and Aaron are here today. Rustin and Joe could not make it, which I'm very sad about. Someday, give it another year or two, we'll try and get the whole band back on, because I would love to talk to everyone.
That'll be fun.
Okay, so
they're the important ones anyway.
You guys are equally as important.
We are the bass player and the drummer. You know that, right?
The most important part of the band. You can't have a band without.
We're the foundation.
Exactly.
They're just dancing around up in the rafters with melody and all that stuff that no one cares about.
This is true.
Lyrics?
Right. Like, who needs words to songs? So Taken Alive was formed in 2022. 2022.
Yeah.
My God, my brain. You know, 2009 and 2002.
Yeah.
When you say 2022, my brain starts having a fit.
Yeah.
Like, what? That doesn't sound right. Anyway, okay, formed in 2022. And I'm using some buzzwords off of the About page on your website. Mm-hmm. Nostalgic mid-2000s emo rock with a modern infusion, which I really like. You released an EP called Matches last year, and currently, I don't know if that was a month or so ago, you released Stuck in Motion, which that one has a music video, right?
Yes.
Yes, and that's out on all streaming platforms, and it looks like you added a note that says full release end of year 2025 or early 2026, so no official date yet, but big things are scheduled. I should mention it's episode 56. Okay. I always forget to say
Good
that,
number.
so vermonttalks.com/56 will get you to the show notes, which will link to all of your stuff. So, welcome, James, Aaron.
Thank you.
Yeah, good to be here. Thank you.
It's a very rainy day. I'm glad you guys were able to make the drive up. So,
Yes.
Where does the band practice?
Typically, well, it has been split, but more recently, more often, it's been in my space. I live in Barrie, Vermont, and it's kind of like, I think it's a classic drummer, so I've got all the big, heavy stuff, or a lot of the big, heavy stuff there and kind of set up in my space. And then the other space that we've practiced at, not so recently, but we kind of jump back and forth, is Rustin's space. And Rustin is also a drummer, so, for all the same reasons.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also, though, I also live in Barrie, so
Convenient.
two of us having to drive an hour, or one of us having to drive an hour when Rustin comes down to Barrie, it's a little more efficient.
Right. Plus, if you're out of the city, it's nice to make noise. That's always a big thing. People struggle to find good places that they can actually play at conveniently.
Yes, we run slightly less risk at my space of like a neighbor murdering
Upsetting
us
people.
during
Yeah.
Right, noise ordinances and things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely interesting. Okay, so you guys have an amazing sound.
Thank you.
I really like the term, like the nostalgic mid-2000s emo rock. Do you is it alt rock? I feel like we had this long discussion last time you were on the show, James, where we were talking about like what is genre, like what are these things, like what buckets do you compare yourself to with Taken Alive? What buckets? How do you feel about this?
Yeah, I think first it's interesting that the last time I was on your show was not Taken Alive, it was for Bandhive.
Yes.
And I had just come from a Nerves practice where I was the sound engineer, not the bassist.
It's all connected.
Yeah. And then like 3 months later, they asked me to join the band. The classic sound engineer to bassist trope. Like it happens all the time. I think that was either the first or second time that I had gone in to help with a rehearsal. And that was at Rustin's place. But yeah, genre is an interesting thing. And it goes back to what you and I were talking about in the car, Aaron. Without naming names, we came up with a new genre, which is a very popular genre at the moment. We'll let the listeners and our bandmates try and guess who it's about. But we came up with the genre name of shoegaze with double kick.
Okay.
And there's a
yeah.
lot of like sweater and corduroy pants
There's an
wearing.
aesthetic to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So-
like like shoegaze in and of itself as a genre just kind of cracks me up. Like I love the name. It just evokes so much weird imagery though when you say shoegaze to people, that corduroy and shoegaze. That
go
goes
together.
well together. Yeah.
Yeah. And you have to have the elbow patches like any good professor.
Right. Right.
It's the aesthetic. We are not wearing any of this,
No.
listener.
Yes, we're kind of heading back. Like this is not what Taken Alive sounds like.
Yes, no.
But
I am wearing a black Enter Shikari shirt with black skinny jeans, and Aaron has a gray or green flannel with a Connor Lynn Frost shirt.
That's right.
And black skinny jeans.
Favorite shirt. It's purple and it's very comfortable.
Yeah. Connor's awesome, and he lives in Vermont too, just down the road. So we
Cool.
need more Vermont people.
nice. The black skinny jeans, that fits the aesthetic of Taken Alive.
That's the
Yeah.
genre.
And the t-shirts,
That's the,
right.
And
Black
the
skinny
window.
jeans should be a genre.
Yeah. The Vans Converse, is that your Converse
this
guy?
is a J.C. Penney special. I'm not sure what
Okay.
they are, but
they kind of
Vans
look
Converse
like Vans. Yeah.
clone.
I bought 4 of them and they were cheap. And J.C. Penney is like kind of going the way of the, I don't know, Dodo. So I bought them out of these. They're blue.
I was
blue
about to make an
shoes.
80s reference and say like the video killed the radio star. The Amazon killed the JCPenney mall.
Yes.
Yes, they did. Okay. Taking a lot. You Enter Shikari. You're wearing an Enter Shikari shirt, so I had to just circle back to this. My first concert ever. Enter Shikari was supposed to come, and they didn't show up. But that's my first
What?
concert
Oh
ever.
no.
What concert was it?
That's it. They were. I don't know because I was like 15 and didn't have internet at the time, and this was their 2000. This must have been like 2008 or 7.
Man.
Got it.
Right? And they didn't show up at Higher Ground, but my ticket says
Yeah.
Enter Shikari, and I totally could not tell you the other bands on the
Got it.
ticket. But it's really funny because I'm like, oh yeah, that band I never saw.
Interesting.
That's
But
crazy.
everyone else also showed up in black skinny pants.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
That's really interesting because I know that they have played there as an opener
yes.
in like 2009,
yeah, that's funny.
and I
'cause
wasn't there. I wish I could have been there.
That's it. It
But
was like one of the
that's-
two things. They didn't show
Yeah.
up, and they were the headliner to that.
And they're the one band you
particular-
wanted to see.
I didn't even know bands 'cause back then. I knew the radio because I didn't have internet.
Yeah.
Which is so hard to explain to people, but it's like being a kid with no internet. I used to spend
Yeah.
like an entire day downloading one MP3 file on my dial-up, and like you had to make sure you wanted that MP3 file.
Yeah.
because it
You
probably
were risking your computer.
yeah. Oh yeah, all the weird stuff. That was like
Yep.
LimeWire days. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But that was the funny thing is I'd be like, one of my friends would be like, this show in Burlington, which was an hour and something away.
Yep.
Like, cool, yeah. What band is this?
Yeah.
Like,
So you said, okay, I'm along for the ride. I'll come.
they all
and
were
then-
wearing their black skinny pants and were like, this is the greatest band, you need to come.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, sounds like my jam.
And then there was no Enter Shikari.
And then they didn't show up, but the
what
other
is
bands
this?
were awesome.
I need to find out about what this was because this is trivia to me now.
I think I still have the Higher Ground ticket, to be
Nice,
honest.
nice.
I tried to save them back in the day when that was
If you
still
can
a
send me
thing.
a photo of that so I know the date,
I'll see. I'm
I can
pretty
do some
sure they were
sleuthing.
the headliner. See, now it's been 10 years since I
Yeah.
looked at that thing. But anyway, so the skinny pants are part of the genre. That is definitely part of it. It's very. I'm trying to think of what other bands I could compare. Like I could even bring up in the same sentence as Taken Alive. You're kind of an anomaly
Yeah.
in Burlington, Vermont's. You know, the whole scene around here. We don't have a lot of people producing clean.
It's kind of an enigma even outside of Vermont because we're not in the pop punk space really. Like if somebody asked me for an easy descriptor, I'll say pop punk, but we're not pop punk.
No,
Because,
yeah,
like,
no.
that
person's-
Emo's like way more what I would think.
Yeah.
of.
Right.
But no one else is making emo rock the same way anymore, except for like you're wearing the Enter Shikari shirt. There are these bigger, older bands that I think of, but
Well, and even for them though, they are much more electronic focused than we are. Like they have all the the dubstep, the drum and bass vibes
Right.
mixed in. Less so now, but they're still very electronic, which we are not. We do have electronic elements. We'll have synths and stuff, but it's not like the primary driving force.
Mhm.
It's a rock sound with some ear candy mixed in. So
I've used like Jimmy Eat World as an example when
yeah,
certain people have asked, but that in my opinion like does not cover it or fit either.
right.
Jimmy Eat World was more of an answer knowing who I was standing in front of and who was asking that question, and like, okay, they're at what band would they know? And then
Right.
I've also like Warped Tour adjacent.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a good
but that's not a
description.
band.
It's true, but I mean, there's also the fact that 3 of the 4 of us have been on Warped Tour, so that's definitely a massive influence on
Yeah,
like who we are as a band.
and the years too. That could mean like Cookie Monster metalcore, or that could mean ska punk too. So
I mean,
Yeah.
they did a pretty good job of having a blend.
yeah, listeners just gonna have to come out to a show. How about that?
Yeah.
Right.
Which, speaking of, this episode releases in like 4 or 5 days, if I'm correct.
Yes, I'm gonna next Wednesday is my goal to have this released.
Wonderful. So that's going to be well before our next show, which is June 27th at Oddfellows.
Oh yes, that looks
The
like a
return.
great ticket. Yep.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun. It's with Doom Service, who we just saw their sticker over on the 242 door that's hiding around the corner. Doom Service, Taken Alive, a band from Maine who I'm forgetting the name of. Is it Benched? Benches? I'm going to feel really terrible. And we're here to kill. Aaron's going to hook me up here and save the day.
Yes, it looks like a really great ticket, though. I must say, I saw that and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna do my very best to make it to this one."
That is an all ages show at Oddfellows. It is with our buddies in Doom Service, We're Here to Kill, and Better Sense.
Better Sense. So I got like half of the letters in there.
Yes,
I apologize.
you got the
to
majority
Better
of the
Sense.
letters.
Nice.
This
Yeah.
show was just, there's been so much chaos because it was supposed to be at the lounge and then Nectar's closed, which means the lounge is closed.
Yes.
And so it's all like in the last 3 or 4 days come together.
And different names and details flying back and forth. But
Yeah.
to your point, it's come together. And we were just talking on the way up here. I haven't set foot in that building since like 2005.
yeah.
Yeah.
So-
They definitely had kind of closed stuff down, and then.
Just like that door.
Yes, that door was very
But,
slammy today. So Fisher, I was there when they reopened, and
Oh, that's cool.
Shout out to Fisher again. Everyone in town is
Yeah.
shouting out to Fisher all the time because he's always putting together this stuff. But yeah, he bought like speaker systems and also found from Jim's basement.
Yep.
These have traveled over to Oddfellows thanks to Brian as well as Fisher and them setting that
Yeah.
whole thing up because that space is very solid. I must say, I was very impressed. Well, hopefully we'll have some fans. The only thing I'm worried about
Yeah.
is the heat in that place, but it's a huge
were
open space.
Just
Yeah.
talking
So-
about that.
It's,
yeah, bring a fan.
there will be fans there, but whether they are the cooling kind or the heating kind, that remains to be seen.
Yes. You might want to bring yourself like a hand fan and be like you're from the 1900s or what have you, because
Yes.
you might be toasty and you might really appreciate that fan.
That was also a joke which I think flew over everyone's head of
I was
the human fans, which will warm up the room even more,
Yes,
will be there.
The organic heaters.
Yes.
I will have a cooling fan as purchased
Yes.
from Home Depot that
Yeah.
sits at an angle by my throne.
I need to get
Otherwise,
one
I
of
will
those.
die.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as long as we keep the crab coring to crab coring, what does
Yeah,
attack do?
Crabcore.
Yeah. The knee thing.
Yeah.
It'll.
That's where
Bad
it
joke.
comes
They're
from.
not all
The
good.
crab. You know,
Yes, okay.
You're on it. Like,
The last time I was there was a lot of that going on because it was 2005.
yeah.
Nice. Yes. Back in the day.
We've now mentioned both like grandfathers of electronicore. Enter Shikari and Attack. We have
This is
the
true.
British side and the US side covered. This is not where you thought this
I
podcast was going to
haven't thought
go.
about Attack in a long time. I don't remember that genre as well. I was too hardcore. I don't
Yeah.
remember these things. I was very into Between the Buried and Me back then.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
I just thought about them. I didn't mention it
So
on the drive up,
good.
but I thought about them.
See, and I had that attitude because I was, 16, so I was very into Between the Buried and Me.
They had like the Suits, right? Was that?
They were
I think
probably
that was
they might have done something like that. They were very vegan and into composing their music.
I forgot that they're vegan. Yeah.
Yeah, there were
Did you see
7
them?
of them, and they'd compose it and then learn
Yeah.
it. They didn't write it like on
Sure.
the guitar. They composed it on a computer and
Yeah.
then learned it. And I was so like, the gods of metal,
Yeah.
or whatever. They're some sort of prog metal core screaming.
Yep.
That's it.
They-
I don't care about genre. I'm very bad at defining genres, and some people are very
Yeah.
good at it. And I'm just like, yeah, they were heavy.
Yeah,
I was
remember-
into that.
They played Higher Ground. I want to say it was April 24th of 2010. It was like the 22nd, 24th, 26th, something like
I
that.
was at that
with
one.
Mastodon
Yes, it was
and-
so good. Ah.
Valiant Thor and one other band. Who
I
don't
like that you
remember.
remember the date of that show because I saw them and I was so amazed.
I
They're
remember
so
a
fun to
lot
watch.
of early shows, and then after that, they all just kind of blend together.
Right. That's kind of
But-
how I am too. I'm like,
Yeah.
I remember the moments at this show. Now I'm like, I don't remember how many shows I've been to.
Yeah.
Back then I could like count them off, and now I'm like, many.
So
I've seen some stuff.
I can tell you, I have been to 153 non-local shows as a patron.
Nice.
If you count shows worked or local shows, I have no idea. It's in the thousands.
Right. Right. Well, that's it. I don't
It's-
remember.
I keep
anymore.
a list of all the ones that I go to as like, I want to see this.
Cool. No, that's awesome. I miss the days of having ticket stubs because
Yeah.
Keep track.
right, they were kind
Exactly.
of cool. We didn't have like all. I don't know about you guys, but I don't have a great CD collection that managed to survive the ages. My parents are like, "Look at this album! I got it this day," and they have the art and everything,
Yeah.
and like. They have this reverence to the thing that I feel like we lost it. I had it with this ticket stubs though. I was like this stub, and I
Yeah.
still have them. That's it.
That's-
They sit in a box somewhere.
Yeah.
It's funny that you bring that up because I can actually tell you the very first day I bought an AFI CD, which was July 4th of 2008, and I can tell you that because that was also the very first day that I interviewed for a job as a little 14-year-old or 15-year-old. Can't even remember how old I was, but I can remember the date. At McDonald's, of all places. And of all places, not to shame McDonald's, but I've been vegetarian my whole life. that's the
why you
of all
remember that.
places. Yeah. And I'm vegan now, as of 11 years ago. It's been a long time.
It's been a minute.
Yeah, I can remember my actual first viewing of a musical performance, and then my first oh, that's my first show. It
Yeah.
was ZZ Top at
Ooh, nice.
the fairgrounds, and then a month later, it was Hawthorne Heights with a bunch of people I don't remember at Higher Ground.
Nice.
Nice.
I
It was-
also
hell
saw
yeah.
Hawthorne Heights back in the day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Bringing up all these names.
Probably the
I
same
haven't thought
show.
Of. It's so long.
Yeah.
could have been. And to your point, since then, it's mush,
You know, it's
brain
funny.
mush.
Most of the times I've gone and seen emo bands was not here in Vermont because they
Right.
usually don't come here. I've seen Jimmy Eat World in Vermont 2 or 3 times. I've seen Pennywise a couple times. That was fun.
Cool.
But mostly it's been, Boston or Albany for emo
Right.
bands, and here's I've seen Still Rustin' Pickups or Sick Puppies. It's the metal or the
yeah, I remember Sick Puppies. coming
indie
up
rock.
there. Yeah. Right.
But you've both seen emo, so emo does come here.
Yeah. It
I've just
did.
missed out.
It used to.
Yeah.
It used to, and it's
Still does.
everybody still remembers. A lot of people still remember, but I
This
guess
is-
circling back, emo, I feel would be a more at the moment.
Yeah. I saw Bayside.
Accurate.
I take that back. I saw Bayside. They're emo.
Ooh,
That was a fun one. It's a 99-cent Lodo show.
Yes.
That's-
Yeah.
I miss
that brings
those.
me back. Oh my god.
Yeah.
They still have them. I've gone to a few of them. There's
Yeah.
one this month, I think.
Oh,
It
nice.
might have already happened.
There was one
I'm-
in November.
Yeah, I don't know if they do them as often as they used to, but they definitely
Yeah.
still do them.
And I don't think it's necessarily bands that they actually play on the Buzz anymore. Like sometimes it's not really a fit. I'm like, they don't play this.
They'll like play the person specifically because they're doing a Lodo show with them. I saw Meg Myers, which was really something. That was probably 7 or 8 years ago now. That was that was wild. That was
before
like
times.
Really, really odd show. Like, I think she was on something. It was like a very weird, visceral experience. A lot of stabbing and screaming and rolling around on the ground. And they had like a cello player who was so legitimate, like watching her do that.
That sounds more like an Amanda Palmer show. Like,
that's where my head went.
If I can pronounce her name properly, it's like stumbling over my words. That makes me think of one of the strangest bills I saw, which I loved. It was fantastic. Was Sick Puppies headlining, Terrible Things direct support, and Violent Soho opening. So you had like Aussie grunge, emo, and hard rock, and it's like, this is not really a fit. Like, it's really cool. It was a great lineup. I love all 3 of those bands now. But it was a very strange lineup.
Yeah, we definitely get some of those oddball tours coming up this way.
Yeah. Although, actually, I take it back. I'm mixing up 2 different Sick Puppies shows. The one with Terrible Things, it was Sick Puppies, Terrible Things, and Play the Angel out of Montreal. Really cool, like, pop rock band. The other one was Sick Puppies, the band with the keyboards that I can't remember, Crash Kings, and Violent Soho. And that's a little more of a fit, but again, like kind of pop rock between 2 hard rock bands, or a grunge and a hard rock band.
Right.
But it was a fun bill.
We'd fit on that bill.
Yeah, we could play that.
Yeah. Listener, if you are in Sick Puppies or Violent Soho
or Shim. If Shim comes back with a solo project,
right.
I'd open for Shim.
Okay, last random Higher Ground story, since it all comes back to Higher Ground, most of those bigger shows. Because I was very into the heavy stuff at some point, my friend talked to me and she's like, I got you this ticket. We're going to go to this concert for your graduation present. I'm like, oh, cool. Avenged Sevenfold.
At Higher Ground.
Opened for Hollywood Undead.
That's brutal.
It was so bad and so weird, and I hated everyone in the crowd.
I also hate you for seeing that, because that's awesome.
It was like, they opened, and I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. But then it devolved into Hollywood Undead, and it was just the worst people
I can't
in the
imagine.
crowd.
Wow.
Was the weirdest.
Was this
mix.
2011 or so?
Yeah, 2011. Yeah.
I know people who went to that show and it's like, they're going to go see Hollywood Undead? And I don't think I realized that A7X was opening.
That was it. You had this
'Cause,
weird mix of
they're
very,
so much bigger.
serious metalheads and these very odd children who really liked Hollywood Undead. That's the only show I've ever been at where I almost got in a fight. And I'm a pretty, chill person, but this kid in the plastic stripy glasses wouldn't stop, hitting me when the band wasn't even on. And I was like, can you not?
Yep.
And then they proceeded to be like, we're at a fucking concert. What did you expect to happen? And I was wearing my steel toe boots, so I just turned and stomped. And they fell into their friends and I don't know what happened after that. They disappeared. But what is this crowd of people? It was so weird. But yeah, I had to think of that.
That's amazing.
It was this weird mix of people wearing black and then people wearing hot pink.
Yep.
In the same room.
The neon wrap or whatever they called it.
And the flat brim hats. And the plastic glasses you couldn't see through that they wore for some reason.
The slats, right?
Yeah, the slats. Yeah. It's like you have Venetian blinds on your face. What is happening? Why? Anyway.
Yeah.
Yes.
I feel like we could go on with stories another one's popping into my head, and I'm going to refrain from telling it and sidetracking.
We should talk about Taken Alive, because Taken Alive was nerves. That's something we should also mention, because I saw slivers of one. You haven't played many shows. That's another thing. We should talk about this.
Played 10?
I think this
Not
last one.
Personally.
I think this last one was number 10.
Yeah.
And then
I've been
as
all of
this
them.
unit. 8?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. 'Cause
So correct.
you guys
Yeah.
joined. Let me get this right.
So
Did I write it down?
March,
Yes.
of
Tell me.
2023.
Yeah. Oh my
And
gosh,
so the first two
years.
shows were October 2022. Middle East upstairs in Boston and Monkey House opening for Keep Flying. The Monkey House one. The Middle East upstairs was like a 4 or 5 band local bill. So for that one, I went down and did tech, just for the band, like for in-ears and that kind of stuff, since I do sound. And then the one at the Monkey House, I ended up mixing, and which that was really cool because that actually started a friendship with me for Keep Flying, which was really fun. They're like amazing people, and I'm happy to now call John and the rest of them, but especially John, good friends. Just saw them in Nashville like 2 weeks ago at the time that this comes out. Really cool new record called Time and Tide. Go check it out. It's available everywhere. Smart Punk has vinyl. They're playing Boston in early June or late May. They're playing Montreal on, I think, May 27th, 28th, something like that. So go check them out. And then they were planning on playing a show in March called the Mega March Birthday Bash, which I was booking. It's a combination of Sub Sam's birthday and my 30th birthday at the time. This is 2 years ago. And so we were getting them on the... I'm 32 now. I feel so old.
Mm-hmm.
Time goes by.
Yeah. Or the bravery. Time won't let me go. Anyway, it quickly came up, hey, our drummer and bassist that have like kind of been filling in can't make it for that show. Aaron's going to do drums and do double duty, but we still don't have a bassist. I was like, I know the songs. I've filled in on bass before. I can do that. Okay, cool. You can fill in. And then we added a show at Higher Ground opening for... Was that the Thank You Scientist show?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think so.
Who's playing Burlington on like Thursday this
Cool.
week. So if this comes out on Wednesday, tomorrow night, Thank You Scientist is back at
Good
Higher Ground. Go
band.
check it out.
Very good band.
Fantastic. They have a new singer now. I kind
Yeah.
of want to check that out. And that was, I think, March 3rd. And after the show, literally standing in the showcase lounge, the four of us are in a circle, and Rustin and Joe say, "So, do you guys want to join the band?" Like, what? Where'd that come from? The whole point was to have a band where you can just slot people in, replace people as needed. You know, they're all just essentially session musicians.
Right.
And it came down to, no, we think you're a good fit. If you want to join, you can. And so I think I decided the next day, and we had to beg you for like a good few weeks. It was after the next show, which was 3 weeks later, that it was like, hey, by the way, are you in?
I was just setting expectations. I was just stringing you guys along.
I started a campaign. I remember this specifically. I changed Aaron's nickname in the Facebook group chat to Drummer Boy, B-O-I. And I said, we're not calling him anything but Drummer Boy until he joins the band. And it worked. We're calling you Aaron now.
It did.
You were no longer Drummer Boy. That was also, speaking of Brian LeClaire, at the Birthday Bash, the second of those two shows in March of 2023, I gave him a hug. Unbeknownst to him, part of giving him that hug was I taped a set list to his back from our set. And so for the entire Sub Sam set, he was walking around with a Nerve set list taped to his back. It was fantastic.
I have a photo of that, I'm pretty sure.
I love it. I have an
Nice.
Instagram store.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Brian.
Remind me, this is going to kill me because Better Things played that show. You were there doing sound, I think.
Better Things played the Keep Flying show at the Underground. So that was
Okay.
a year later, after the second Birthday Bash was canceled due to the blizzard that didn't cancel Chapel Roan. Good for her, bad for us. But the second year is supposed to be Sub Sam, Better Things, and Valerie Falls. And so that unfortunately got canceled. We were able to finagle Better Things onto the Keep Flying bill, as well as McAsh. Unfortunately, Sub Sam couldn't make it. They would have had first choice because they were the headliner, and McAsh was already confirmed, so we only had space for one more band.
Yeah. Right.
So we, again, apologized to Valerie Falls. We only had space for one. They were chill with it when we told them. They understood. But yeah, that was a fun show too.
It's interesting.
Yeah. It was also a matinee show, so it was done at 7. It was really nice.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of nice for you guys when you have to lug everything around. Cool. Okay, so when did the Nerves name get dropped exactly? Because I think Nerves was at least a handful of shows, right?
Yeah, it was after that. So the March 2023 shows were the last ones under that name, and then the name officially changed in October of 2023.
Got it. Okay.
Which I always joke about this. It's a great time when a war starts and you've just rebranded to Taken Alive and set up a Google alert like 2 days before.
Oh no!
And then a war breaks out and you're getting all this things about hostages. You're like,
single SEO hit
this is not what I expected to see in my inbox every morning.
Oh yeah, that's slightly morbid.
And it has calmed down, but yeah, poor timing on that. And it's actually an aviation reference. It has nothing to do with war or kidnapping. I mean, aside from like hijacking.
Right.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, you could pick, I don't know, Purple Sweater and Corduroy Pants is like a band name. And it, like, no matter what you play, like, if you, they're like, you can kind of take it so, like you can take anything out for a spin if you like lean into it, I guess is what I'm getting at. And then it just so happens that like Taken Alive is like, to some people that could sound like, oh, that sounds like heavy music, or that sounds like, I mean, we all listen to heavy music. And so it's, not unfair to say that some of like the band influences come from that corner of the room. It's not like, it doesn't present itself as that live all the way. But I don't know, that is to say, like, I feel like since then we've kind of leaned into it, and it's I think it fits very well with the emo flair, like the email
kind of like the
side of like it could be anything, and then you like give it a listen, and then people are like, oh, okay, yeah, I see that, how that fits in.
And that's not to say our name is as good as The Used. That's a fantastic name, but I like our name.
I'm saying it's better than The Used, and Bert can come fight me for it, and any news is good news. So
yeah, it's the change was necessary. There were several other bands going by Nerves, which was NRVS.
Yeah. And
people always asked, is it Nerves or Nervous? And this was before I joined the band, before they released anything. I was like, I don't know. But they stuck with it because they'd already had like a bunch of stuff printed, to be fair. And I was like, okay, but before we do more, let's consider this. And we all voted to change it. And we went through so many names. We had a spreadsheet with over 100 names in it.
Nice.
And
it's incredibly hard to pick something.
Yeah. Which, coincidentally enough, and actually I'm not going to say this because then somebody's going to take it and use it. But
really awesome band name. Insert here.
Yeah. A friend and I were chatting, and it involves something that we talked about earlier. I'll give a hint. It's in the group chat. You can see it, and I'll tell you back after the show.
It's Corduroy.
Yes.
Yep.
Corduroy Pants is the band name.
Such a good name.
But yeah, a friend and I were just chatting, and she was using voice to text, and I was like, "Oh, that's the perfect name."
Nice.
Oh yeah.
Just a little mix-up of what voice to text thinks versus two words that sound the same and are spelled differently.
Right.
But yeah, so Taken Alive, for the two people listening who actually care about aviation versus the other 99% of the listeners on the podcast, you have squawk codes which identify your plane to ATC, and there's 3 specific ones that you use in emergency. 7,500, which is hijacking. 7,600, which is no communications, you've lost your radio. Or 7,700, which is a general emergency. And the way you remember those is 7.5 Taken Alive, 7.6 radio fix, 7.7 going to heaven. I was like, ooh, Taken Alive, that sounds pretty badass. Like, we could use that.
Right.
And so we did.
I totally thought of Aliens when I saw you changed the name. That's what I thought of.
That could be. That could be.
Little green men have taken me alive.
That's a good t-shirt idea or visual.
Exactly.
It would be, but also Taken Alien would have been a really cool name because it would rhyme.
Right.
We could have had the rhyme Taken Alien.
Wasn't that whole show or movie too? Taken. For some reason, that evokes alien images
I
as
think
well.
so. That sounds familiar.
Maybe
Liam
that's
Neeson.
why I jumped to that immediately in my
Yeah.
mind, was Little Green Men.
I think you beamed to it.
Yep.
Although jumped actually works too, because you can like hyper jump. So I
Yes.
apologize for stealing your thunder
Oh,
and not
no.
getting your unintentional joke.
You're all good. But yeah, I could totally see a shirt with like Taken Alive and the little tractor beam or something like
That's
that.
just it's coming out of the A.
Right,
that's-
right. There you go. Even better.
Joe does our design for the most part. So Joe, when you listen to this, you better listen to this.
Yes.
it's your band.
Support the band.
You're
Of
doing
course.
this now. This is our next shirt design. And it's very simple. 2 colors, white and green. Or maybe just green on black.
Right, you could get it screen printed.
Yeah.
Okay, so the band. I know we talked about Band Hive last time, so we talked about like the music industry.
Yeah.
Are you applying all of these concepts to Taken Alive? Like, what? How are you using your Band Hive mojo with Taken Alive? You have a very specific formula to doing these things.
Yeah.
So.
That's a very good question. For Taken Alive specifically, I'm very opinionated on many things, but recognizing that it is Rustin and Joe's band, they allow us to have input. It's typically a vote, but ultimately Joe and Rustin are the deciders. When it comes to production stuff, that's more my realm, because that's my background especially. So Rustin and I will kind of nerd out about like the playback rig, the lights, that kind of stuff. Like we have lights that are completely programmed to our set.
Cool.
Which if you're coming to Oddfellows, we're not going to use them that night because it's a DIY show. It's going to be a little chaotic. It's too much for us to bring that in, and we don't want to be like, hey, this is going to be really cool, but you guys can't use them because they're not programmed. Like
Right.
somebody would have to sit there and either program them ahead of time or run them, and there's no one to do that effectively.
Right.
That show will be a great example of like scale or like scalability, ability to kind of scale, in one direction or the other with production and the songs that we choose to put in a set and like the length and really everything about it. Like to your point, audio, lights, like we have different, tools in the tool chest that we can kind of pull out and kind of, like a Lego, you can stick it on top and like there's a little more to it now, or you can, kind of leave it at home if we're playing at Oddfellows, or if there's a timing component that we need to be mindful of. And that's like, I guess, stealing your thunder for a bit, like in thinking about like the mental tools in the mental toolbox and like the approach to, the way that we think about doing things and how scalability is kind of the way that we approach that as well. Like everybody in the band has kind of their default, like this is my strength, like this is kind of my realm and what I do all day or not. Obviously like Rustin and Joe like started this band and, in thinking about James, like your background and my background, like everybody's got their like comfort zone, right? And what they can bring to the table. But like in the same way that we're able to scale to the left or to the right or forward and backward on visual and audio production, we kind of take a similar step to like decision making. I guess in a roundabout way, that's the point that I'm trying to make. If that makes any sense at all, is just options. Like it's always good to have options, whether we're talking about bringing lights or not, or what the set is, or what isn't, or who we're going to go record with or not, or what kind of posts at what interval. Like that's kind of the flavor I feel that's thread throughout the entirety of the band, is like options and flexibility, and scalability. And
that's part of the design of it. Like, and there's certain things that we can't do without, like, because we are playing to some limited tracks for like added percussion, synths, that kind of stuff, because like we don't have a keyboard live. We can't do without in-ears. So we're always going to have our split, which means we're just going to bring our microphones to keep it easy and run through that. But for example, at Oddfellows, I'm probably not going to have a vocal mic because I do some shouting on one song and make witty remarks between a couple songs while like somebody's tuning,
Right.
I'm not adding that much. It's like, okay, if we're going to pare it down, I don't need to do that, you know? Saves us a little time and also just makes it an easier setup.
Yes, which these DIY shows where everyone's tearing down and putting everything up in 10-15 minutes as quick as you possibly can. Because there's not enough room. You can't leave everything all set up between all of the bands most of the time.
Well, and that's the beautiful thing for us is we're not using cabs. So since we're all direct, there's less stuff for us to move. Aside from we have the split, we have the in-ear rack.
Right.
So we're trading off in one way, but it, in our opinion, lets us put on a better show because we can hear ourselves really well.
Yeah.
And we're not fighting feedback off of stage wedges, that kind of stuff. We can hear each other fantastically. We can have our own individual mixes. Like if somebody wants to, at a DIY show, jump into the crowd, we can do that and still have our mix in our ears. That's
Flexibility.
actually,
you can drop us in any room, and
exactly.
it's going to be the same for us.
But on that note, it's we played Higher Ground last March, opening for. Actually, I'm not going to say their name because they're now canceled, so I'm not going to give them the promotion. But my bass was cutting out, and because I was wireless, I literally just walked out to front of house to talk to Brady, who was running sound. I was like, "Hey, I think this is what's going on. Can you do me a favor and swap patches real quick on the rack, and I'll keep playing?" And he's like, "Okay, cool." And I got that, and we solved the issue.
Yeah.
Had I been not wireless with the bass, I could never have walked out there to talk to him.
Right.
And I remember after the show, Elliot from which band was playing that night? He's in a bunch of different bands as the drummer. Elliot Lester. I can't remember which of his bands was playing that night. I think it might have been
Heavy Band.
Yeah, the new one. I'm blanking on the name. I'm sorry, Elliot. But he came up to me and was like, "Dude, that was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Like, you just walked out there and you're still playing." I'm like, "Oh yeah," and it's like I could hear too.
Right.
Like,
Wireless in ears.
Yeah.
You could hear when the problem solved.
And like I definitely messed up as I was talking because I'm like trying to talk while playing bass.
Right.
And I'm not that good.
That is one of the hardest things in the world.
Yeah. I don't know how Rustin and Joe sing and play at the same time. Like, I can barely do that.
I can
to
play
yell,
guitar.
"Don't sweat it."
I cannot play bass. I can't play a bass line and sing, but I can play guitar just fine.
I am very much a root note bassist for most of our songs. There's a couple songs that I do have a little more freedom to play around with. And on the new record, I think it's going to be a lot more. Yeah, it's going to be a challenge. But speaking of the new record, going back to that flexibility of who we work with, we're really lucky to have an amazing team on the record. We're getting mixes back from James Paul Wisner right now,
cool,
who has worked with Paramore, Under Oath, I think All American Rejects, if I'm not mixing him up with Howard Benson.
Ton of folks.
Yeah. Any big band between 2005 and 2010, he's been involved in some way.
Is this someone you met at some point in your career, or did you just happen to reach out and then it worked out?
Yeah, he's a friend of Rustin's.
Nice.
So cool. Rustin reached out. So we have Gary from Sound Acres producing. He collects all the files, sends them to JPW. JPW then does the mixes, and once we approve them, they get sent to Mike at Rogue Planet Mastering. And it's just night and day, in my opinion, from... And keep in mind, I do sound too. I would never try to mix our own stuff. Mm-hmm. One, because, if you have somebody at the scale of JPW...
Right.
And you can afford it, you're going to do that. But two, my expertise is more on the live sound side of things. Even though I can do studio stuff, and I love live recordings, it's like, no, there's a time and a place to recognize, hey,
right,
we could do this ourselves, but it's going to be better if somebody else does it.
Right. Well, and it's also, there's the whole networking aspect and the fact that you have that name associated with the album.
Yeah.
This is a big deal. Congrats. That's really fucking cool, honestly.
Thanks.
I just want to point out how professional everybody is. I know Rustin because I worked with Rustin for a few years, and I know how professional and serious about his music, his sound. I know how serious James is in terms of what shows you play and who you play with. This is all very carefully thought out, and it's not it's interesting the way you approach music. Some people approach music with such a, like I had Burly Girlies on the show.
Yeah.
I love Burly Girlies, but it's
Yeah, they're
just
fun.
such an interesting amorphous thing, music in Vermont,
Yeah.
right? Because you guys have such a clean, that's it. It's very clean sound. I don't know if that's the in-ear monitors or what helps. I don't want to call you
it
prog
polished.
rock, but exactly, you have such a
Yeah.
polished, clean, professional sound that also kicks ass. So like,
Thank you.
like I'm not surprised that somebody who, you know, helped Paramore out would be willing to help you guys out, because you have put the work and effort, and you have the very serious attitude about this. So congrats. That's really wonderful to hear. I'm really happy for you guys. But like, you approach it as not, I don't want to say a business, but you approach it in such a serious way where you do carefully think out social media posts. Like, what are you going to sell as a band? How is the album going to be marketed?
Yeah. And that's part of why we don't know the release date. Like, we're getting mixes back right now, which Aaron's been good and done his homework. I have not yet listened to the second round of revisions, or the first round of revisions. That's, you know, the second round of mixes, but first revisions. So I think you can speak more to.
Can I
what's
say
coming.
one last thing? I just want to circle
Yeah,
back to
sorry.
Burly Girlies, just because I don't want to be like, oh, leave them hanging. No, like they approach things almost from a cultural attitude, right? Like the band is based in the cultural idea, and like that flows up and outward into their sound. And it's just such a different vibe. Sitting down with them and talking about like the plan is not, it's just not the same attitude, but we produce such amazing, that's my point, is I just wanted to say, like, everybody has such amazing different qualities. Where
Well,
we
that's
get to
just music. Like,
witness it.
there's that much space, like, in the music window. Like, you could have, like, there's so much that is going to sound way more like philosophy than I typically am, but, like, there's so much that is music, right? Like, and like, it's accessible to everybody as it should be, and that's what's special about it. Like, we've all been in projects before where the approach has been different than this, and it just so happens that, you know, for Taken Alive, it's you know, it is what this is, like what we're talking about. There's a bit more calculation to it, but there's also I don't think any one of us would ever say we're ever done learning, right? Like you know, you iterate and improve, or, you know, get a little closer today and tomorrow and the next day, and but like, end of the day, it's something that we all, like, there's a reason we're doing this. We enjoy it and love it, and it means something to us. And I don't know, that's just kind of what's cool about it, is like, it is different than what some other people do. And like, we've done that approach too, and it's just a new thing for us. And but to your point, like, knowing Rustin, you know, project management, like, there's a lot of project management occurring, you know, on the other side of the
Curtain.
The curtain. Yeah, I'm thinking like Wizard of Oz. But it's just, and that's fun too, and like in a different way, and that gets you something different. And so far, I'll speak for the whole band. I'll do it. We're very excited, because I am very excited for about what we're hearing, like in the revisions of the mixes and what's coming next. And it's just a huge step in the direction that we're trying to walk in. And I don't remember what the initial question was. I'm so sorry, but it's
I think it came from James.
Super
actually,
stoked.
I circumvented with the Burly Girlies comment.
Yeah, it was about the mixes we're hearing.
Oh,
so perfect.
Unbelievably excited for that, and just like 200% nailing it. Like, not that there is any universe out there in which like the people we're working with wouldn't be 200% nailing it, but it's just to hear and see the stuff come full circle, and like, okay, I recorded drums for this last July and did some other stuff last September, and just to, you know, okay, well, a couple of steps down the line, you'll hear these mixes back, and that's but like, just for that to happen, and to, you know, well, it's just so exciting.
It's a very long
see
process. You guys have been working on this
get
for
closer
a while.
and closer. Yeah,
it's a long process. We did, and that's how Stuck in Motion actually came from Rustin's solo project. So they did that all at home and then sent it out to JPW to mix.
Nice.
which is funny because it's our most successful song to date, and it's only been out for 2 months.
Yeah, I noticed that you guys have a lot of YouTube views on that one.
Yeah, that one
compared to a
really
lot of
took
other
off,
people.
and Spotify Radio started pushing it, which was fantastic.
Cool.
It's
Nice.
big.
And to go back to what you were saying about different approaches towards music, I think that's a really interesting topic. But I also just want to shout out, because we've mentioned Bandhive a few times. Aaron was also my co-host on that podcast for many episodes. So if the banter just ends up going off the rails, that's because we've done this, I don't know, like 50 times before.
Yes, yeah.
We have bantered and sidetracked many a podcast episode. I'm an expert at that. I'm fantastic at sidetracking.
Captain Tangent over here.
Yeah,
Me.
Captain Tangent, and we'll have to come up with my catchphrase later. Distracto Boy. Captain Tangent and Distracto Boy! But yeah, different approaches to music. And I think this is something that we talked about when I did the Bandhive episode, was there's nothing wrong with just doing it for fun. And ultimately, that is what we're doing as well, is just doing it for fun. But we're approaching it from the, hey, what would a professional band do?
Right.
And that's, neither one of those is right or wrong. It's just a different approach. I love going to see Cooked. They're so fun live. Guarantee you they're just doing it for fun because they love doing it, you know? But it's so cool to see them. Like, they're a fantastic band. But it's a very different approach from what we're doing, where it's very calculated and saying, hey, what would our favorite bands do? That's what we want to do. And so, for example, on this latest record, as the bass player, I'm not actually on it. And that was a conscious decision, one, because I was really busy. It was the middle of summer, and they were doing the recording sessions, and that's busy season for me with live sound. I have several venues around here that I work with, and I'm just slammed in summer. There was a period last July and August where I did 34 days in a row of between live sound and day job and other stuff, like just nonstop.
Yep.
And I love it, and I wouldn't trade anything for that. But I said, look, for these new songs, one, I'm not the best bass player around. Our guitarist, Joe, is a really great bass player because he's a really fantastic guitarist, and, you know, it translates. If you know what you're doing, you can translate it and write a good bass line as well.
Yeah.
You know, the playing itself is like more or less the same, but if you understand how to write a bass line, that's very different, and he does understand that, as does Gary, our producer. And to be honest, I'm not sure which one of them did the bass tracks. It might have been, you know, half dozen here and half dozen there. But it's a conscious decision where I said, hey, look, go do the bass. Have fun, you know? Because that will make it a better product. I know bands like Matt Hose, our other co-host on the Bandhive podcast. For his band, the lead guitarist would do the lead part, the rhythm part, and the bass. Because that would create the best product.
Consistent.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just locked in. You don't have those little timing idiosyncrasies that, like, it's going to make the tightest sound. And for us, like, I don't care about, like, okay, I'm not on the record. Whatever. I'm still part of the band. I still play. Whereas other bands might say, no, I want to be on the record. It's like, that's fine. Like, if either do it really well or just do it for fun, you know? And so it's kind of just the whole vibe. Like, there's not much of an ego involved unless somebody questions my production decisions. Rustin can tell you all about that. And then I'm like, no, Rustin, we're doing it this way. This is the right way to do it. So I remember specifically when they first, the in-ear rig 1.0, as I'll call it, the order of inputs was vocals first, then instruments, then drums, or something like that. I was like, Rustin, this is completely backwards. That's not how anybody that does live sound does it. It needs to be drums, instruments, vocals. And it turned out he had learned that on Reddit from, like, some church guys or something. And church guys are notorious for, like, doing things backwards in the sound world because they're not often trained
right, they're
as
not in the
audio
sound world.
professionals. Right. It's usually like volunteers who are figured out how to do it.
Church, yeah.
And maybe they can mix really well, but they've not, in many cases, stepped into, like, a professional area.
Right.
So we fixed that. We are now on, like, version 2.0, 2.2, something like that. But for certain things, I'm like, hey, we need to make this as easy as possible. Just drop it in and have any engineer say, okay, cool. I know what to plug in where. I'll be very opinionated about that. But then when it comes to actually making music, like, hey, whatever's going to make it best. And in a way, it's the same thing. It's like, we need to do this to make it the best, make it the easiest for the people we're working with.
Right. I want to talk about... Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Eric.
No, I was just going to tie that off and say like that ties into, us making conscious decisions to like kind of leave as many doors open always as we can, like giving ourselves options. Part of that is being collaborative. And the big thing is, we know where we want to try to end up and we walk backwards from there. And the common thread throughout all this is we take what we do seriously because we care a lot about it. Because like Burly Girlies or most anybody else, like you started doing it probably because you enjoy it. Like whatever, it gives something back to you, whatever that is, and whatever that is can change over time too. But there's a return, a reason why you keep picking up the instrument, and so, because of that, in part, we take what we do seriously, but we don't take ourselves seriously. And so that kind of feeds into what you're saying. It's sort of a whatever's clever approach. And, once personalities mesh well, like it's,
right.
makes everything
that's
that
half the
much
struggle
easier.
of making a good band, right? It's just getting a group of people who have the same sort of okay attitude to practicing, showing up, a million different things need to fit together to have a good vibe.
Yeah.
And enjoy being around each other.
Yeah. And speaking of practicing, that's one of the really nice things to playing to tracks is that we can just practice individually, and we try to practice together. But Joe now he's going to be in Connecticut soon. But during the past couple of years, he was mainly in Long Island, then DC. Yeah, so as of June, Joe will live in Connecticut, only about 3.5 hours away, which is much nicer.
It's close, yeah.
But there have been times where, and actually the first show the band ever played, they had never played with Joe in the room before. So this is when I was doing monitors for them and tech. And literally Kevin and Joe, who are now in Geeked Out from Plattsburgh, mixed them a couple times. Really fun band live. The four of us, the two of them, Rust and I, went down. And for three of us, that was our first time meeting Joe in Boston.
Nice. Cool.
And we've done stuff like that where we've done a couple emo nights lately. So we've been a couple, I think 4?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 4.
Where we
2
either
here and 2 at Brighton Music Hall, which was really fun.
Rustin and I, or you and I and Rustin have gotten together to, knock out a rehearsal before, and it might have been Sans Joe, or I think it might have been Rustin and I once, and you weren't there or something, but because of
that was sick.
Yeah, and because of like the approach, we're able to just to like kind of all come prepared, and whether we get a practice in, that's great. But if not, like we've played a handful of songs for the first time together as the full 4-piece in front of a live crowd. And it's like we've been able to, so, feeding into flexibility and options and blah, blah, blah. Just kind of approaching everything from that angle. And to have that work too. Right. Like it speaks a lot to like the individuals in the band and everybody kind of having the same mindset of like, oh, I have to be ready for this. But also, there's the tech, and then just the, it sounds simple, but there's like a lot of, brain space and power that goes into like accepting all the little bits and pieces that feed into like, oh, I need to be ready to like play this. Yeah. For the first time when people are watching me.
Yep. It's so interesting.
I feel very fortunate, and I think we all do that. We've, we all kind of do this,
right.
Personality and we're, God, my brain's blanking. A work ethic, work ethic, the whole 9.
Yeah, that's very important. And what were you gonna say, Becca?
I want to talk about the in-ear monitor system because I know a bit about this in the sense that I know a bit about recording stuff through being a musician, doing the podcast, various life things. I have dealt with some of this. I never played with in-ear monitors though. And this is like this huge hill that I see a lot of bands don't use them, but the bands who do use them, it is a marked difference. Like, and I don't mean it in like a good or a bad way, because I love the local bands.
Yeah.
I love the vibes and the energy and like all of it. But the in-ear monitor systems, if you're constantly using this, that gives you the ability to record everything easily, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like that is suddenly there. So then you can play with each other without actually playing with each other.
Yeah.
That's so huge.
Oh,
in
we
and
do a lot
itself.
of playing with each other.
I've been sit down, you. I've been like being a drummer, right? You think of, upstage center, like center
Yeah.
behind everybody else from the audience perspective.
Right.
And I've found myself like a handful of times now, like
Yeah. Upstage
that's
left.
not where I am. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just because of, everything else that needs to be on stage and when and timing and all that.
Yes.
Were you
And
far stage right for one of our shows? Like downstage right?
yes.
Yeah, it was like, oh, 'cause
Burlington.
Thank You Scientist had all their...
Yep.
Like,
And
they're like a
then-
9-piece band, so they have crazy backline.
A couple of the emo nights I've been upstage left just because of like whatever, but because of the in-ear monitoring system, well, I mean, you can kind of get most all the way to where you want to be with like wedges if there's room for a wedge monitor, but like IEMs completely removes. I could be on the other side of the room and still hear what I need to, and
Right.
that's the same. You. Same reason you were able to walk across, the room 200 feet to go talk to the front of house person, like about some issue while you were playing and listening to the mix back. It's just flexibility, like another thing that allows us to practice independently and play independently together physically, or also play together but more spread out, if that makes sense.
Your experience, actually, like you're listening to the in-ear monitor, so does it basically take away all of that weird atmospheric difference? Because I think most people who've played out, I guess people in the audience, if you haven't been a musician, you probably don't realize how shockingly different it is to play in a practice space versus going out on stage. It sounds so incredibly different, and when you're set up to play, that it is jarring. Like, if you don't do this regularly, your first show out, you're like, I can't hear the bassist, I can't hear the guitars, I can't hear the vocalist. Like, things, the sound quality is extremely lacking, even if you have great, what you're calling wedge speakers, the monitors on stage. Half the time you don't even have that, and a lot of these little tiny bands, a lot of people who just haven't gotten to play in a series, you haven't played at Higher Ground or something, you haven't had great sound people helping with live sound.
You're hoping the guitar player points their amp at you or something.
Exactly. And like, obviously you can't really do that on stage unless you're standing in front of their amp. So your experience using in-ear monitor, can you like kind of talk us through that for people who haven't? Because that's it. Like, what is it like? What do you have to do? I'm assuming you have to mic the entire drum kit every time, right?
Good point.
What's it like? Like, what do you have to set up?
I'll let James speak to like the tech specifics, but I just one thought that kind of popped into my head. My brain immediately zapped me back to my my practice spot in my home. It's, I'll let you correct me if I need correcting, but it's pretty dead, or at least where I have the drums set up, it's pretty like a dead sound. And
well, and you have some gobos up around you as well, so that helps a lot.
Yeah, but the point being, it's just like and by design, I want to because not have the neighbors murder me, but like.
It's Barry, so you never know.
Yeah, but that being the space where I practice just the most, because that's just at home, my ears get used to that, and so I think I hear you that like if we weren't on IAMs or playing, in the past with other groups that aren't on in-ear monitor systems, you kind of have to expect whatever. Like on one hand, that does sort of force you, if the potential exists to like, I might be playing in a room tonight that sounds completely different to how the setup sounded last night or tomorrow night, like that on one hand kind of forces you to like just play to yourself, or like if you're the drummer, play to yourself and like trust the other people to play with you. But another great thing just from a drummer, or as a drummer perspective about IEMs, That does, unless you have like crowd mics and, you know, some extra bits and pieces in the mix, which it's still different if you have things in your ears. Even if you're pumping crowd sound in, it's still going to sound different than if you just didn't have something in your ear holes. But like, for me, at least, the trick is that is different and it feels different. But if you get used to that and you have a ton of control over what the mix is and what you can hear more of or less of, or left ear, right ear, or whatever, and it offers consistency. Like, so in a way, your eardrums aren't receiving the same, you know, signals as if they were just naked and in like In and Odd Fellows, but you're able to depend on and kind of lean on, like, I know what this is going to sound like for me, and like get comfortable with that and kind of get good in using that as a frame of reference, if that makes sense. Like, it's dependable and consistent.
And it's quiet.
And it's quiet. Or, well, I'm deaf as hell, but for you, it's quiet. For me, it's as quiet as I can have it be. But I don't know.
It's quieter than you'd have a wedge. Let's put it that way.
1,000%. Yes. And that's another great point. That this system for me, like, this will have helped me preserve my hearing.
Yeah.
I have some serious hearing issues, and I had invested in some really nice molded IEMs years ago because of that issue, and it just so happened, like, oh, we're using them. Awesome. As a band, I already have them, but like, that's another huge benefit, is you're not going to blow your ears out. I've worked with other musicians who are, you know, my grandparents' age, and they cannot hear, and it's because they do this night after night, and so that's a huge blessing too, is like the health component.
Honestly, I think any band that is playing one show per month or more should invest in it. And like, I know it is expensive. You're looking at like $4,000 to $5,000 for the whole rig. But if you're a 5-piece band, that's $1,000, and you can use this for basically forever.
Right.
You'll have it,
and you will save your ears. A set of hearing aids is like $2,000 or $3,000 if you get decent ones, not even great ones.
And you don't want hearing aids.
So spend that money on some really cool gear and microphones and in-ears, and protect your ears so you don't have to spend that money later. If you're playing once in a blue moon, then, you know, maybe whatever.
Right.
But it's really, you know, to your question of like from rehearsal to playing a show, we'll do minor adjustments on levels for each of our own mixes.
Right.
But overall, we get it dialed in, and like then, you know, there's a couple of big advantages there as well. Is that one, you never know what kind of engineer the venue is going to have.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're dealing with a monitor engineer who's not fantastic, or an engineer that's doing both and is not fantastic, you're kind of at their mercy.
Or if it's like a weird room.
Yeah.
That's it.
You could
or
just
you're
have
showing
that.
up and doing it yourself.
Right. But the other thing is that, one, you don't have to spend time fucking around with the monitor mixes. And if it's a combined position, they can just focus on front of house and make that sound fantastic and not have to worry about, you know, the bassist saying, I can't hear myself, I need more bass. Because I can literally just turn around to my iPad and slide up the fader and cool.
Yeah, what's that conversation for? Like, nope, we're good. Focus on what you need to.
Exactly.
Like, that person's having a good night now.
Yeah.
Right.
And it also gives us typically then more time, whereas if most bands would say, hey, we had 20 minutes for sound check, we ran one song and time's up, we can say, oh, we get to do 2 or 3. Because we didn't have to spend all that time dialing in monitors. Just, we're good. You do you, mix front of house, we're going to run a couple songs. You know? And we can also adjust. I've seen bands do this who are on ears that they are mixing themselves and ask the engineer for an adjustment. It's like, I literally don't have access to your system. But so for us, if we were on wedges and had to ask and there's no dedicated monitor engineer, that's that awkward thing of, hey, sound guy, can I get more XYZ?
Yeah.
And that's never a good look. You know, I understand that it has to happen, but it's not a good look. It distracts from the performance and the show.
Right.
Whereas
the
if it's
moviegoer is
us-
aware that they're watching a movie. At
Right,
that
you're
point.
breaking the fourth wall, essentially, and you're not doing it in the really cool Deadpool way, when you're doing it in a cheesy, like, we didn't get this dialed in earlier way.
Right.
Mm.
That's really
And let me tell you
interesting.
this, no professional will ever do that unless something is really, really wrong.
Right.
They will not get on the mic and ask for an adjustment. They will grin and bear it, or they will find a way to resolve it.
Unless you're Ronnie Radke in that one video I saw of him yelling at his front of house guy.
Yeah. But
In which case you're a jerk.
was
And
he yelling about front of house or monitors, though? Because I'm sure they're at a level where it's separate.
Who
So-
knows what he was yelling about?
Yeah.
But
It's Ronnie Radke. It probably was not deserved. But more so to, we never have to be put in that position because we can just turn around and do it ourselves. And if we're not hearing what we want to hear, it's something that we're doing wrong. But the other thing is that we know exactly what's going out to front of house on an individual basis. So if something is going wrong, we can identify that very quickly and tell the house engineer, like, hey, my bass is cutting out. Can you repatch this cable for me while I keep playing? Because that's the thing that happened that I was talking about earlier. From a tech perspective, it's actually pretty simple. All of our inputs are direct. So they go to a split. And by direct, I mean we don't use amps. We just,
Right. You said you aren't carrying cabs around. This
Yeah.
replaces so much gear.
Yep. I have a Kemper Profiler player, which is a little pedal. Rustin has the HX Stomp, another pedal. And Joe has a Quad Cortex pedal. And so all three of us literally have our bass or guitar and a pedal board. And then like a backup bass or guitar. And that's it. And that's why we can spend time on doing lights, doing in-ears, that kind of stuff. Because we're not lugging in like an 80-pound cab and head. And so it gives us that flexibility. But so all of those inputs, as well as our vocal inputs, go directly to the split. And from that split, it basically duplicates the analog signal. One path goes to our X32 rack, which is our mixer, which sends our mixes then to Sennheiser G4 units in the case of the three of us downstage. Aaron has a wired connection because why spend $1,000 on an extra wireless connection or $500 if you split a unit that you don't need? Just $70 for a Behringer P1, P2. I can't remember which one you use. The better one.
Yeah.
I think the P1 is better than the P2, which is kind of backwards.
Throws me. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to assume it's the P1. And it's just 2 XLR cables.
Yep.
Super easy. And then the other half of that split just goes to the front of house snake.
Right.
And so it's an analog split. For Oddfellows, we might do a digital split. We're debating on what to do, or we might just send stereo. We're in talks with Jeff about that, waiting to hear back. Or at least I'm waiting to hear back from Joe, who is coordinating with Jeff. So maybe I should reach out at some point directly and be like, yeah, we don't need to put Joe in the middle here. Make him do work while he's off studying to become a doctor. We have a couple different thoughts for that just because it is so different than what most people are used to at a DIY show. And so my suggestion for that, which I don't know if they'll want to do it or not, was, hey, if I'm going to be there and we're doing a bunch of this stuff, why don't I just take my board and mix the show for all the bands and then hand the iPad to a friend that knows what they're doing for our set and say, here you go, have fun.
Right.
Like, don't hurt our ears, basically. But going back to the health thing, when you're using in-ears, it's like you're wearing earplugs. So if there's nothing coming through, it's just, you're looking at like a 25 to 30 dB reduction, which is fantastic. Because then you can just pipe in whatever you need on top of that.
Yep.
Like
right.
if you're in a room with subs, if you're playing at any real venue, they have subs. I'm not going to need the low end of the bass, but I'm going to want that attack.
You're going to want that attack.
Yeah.
Attack.
As soon as you started saying that, I was like, oh.
You pre-eye rolled that.
I did.
In anticipation.
Maybe by the third time we're on this show, It'll be a video podcast, and then people will see the terrible
The
expression.
disgust.
And I'm the one that's supposed to make the bad band puns. That's... Aaron, if your house burns down in the next couple days, look out for matches.
That's a...
I self-punned us.
What does that say? Like Deadpool say, it's a fourth wall break within a fourth wall break?
Yeah, something like that.
16 walls.
Oh, I should have brought you a matchbook. We have matchbooks that are amazing because they have Aaron's face on them.
Nice.
From that Thank You Scientist show, Brian LeClaire took photos, and Aaron's just making this stank face while playing the drums. It's amazing.
I might have seen this. Was it on your Instagram?
Yeah, we posted it.
Probably.
He didn't know that he was in there, so it's like, I'm bringing one over, and I'm going to film your reaction.
James got a live reaction.
And it's like, I need you to open it now. And he opens it up, and I can't remember. It was like, oh, you didn't, or something like that. It was priceless.
That was good.
The perks of you and Kate only living like 15 minutes away. I could just be like, hey, I'm coming over with a matchbook. Made in New Hampshire, by the way. They're the only company in the U.S. that still does custom matchbooks. Is in Littleton, New Hampshire.
That's
not Littleton.
really
somewhere
cool.
south. But
New Hampshire.
yeah. Anyway,
Custom
absolutely
matchbooks.
recommend the in-ears. I think everyone should do it. And to go back, so all the vocals and the instruments have to go through no matter what, because otherwise we will not hear them because there's no stage volume.
Exactly. Right. So like
We give
the drum
ourselves
kit.
everything,
Well,
and then front of house, take what
Yeah.
you need.
How many microphones do you bring besides like the instruments obviously running through? How many
Yeah.
mics on the drum kit? How many mics? The vocals, like those are kind of clear, right?
yeah.
But like ambient mics, how many of these are you bringing? Like, what do you?
So for
Are
an
you lugging
ideal
20
scenario,
mics around?
I mean, yes, but we're not using all of them because I just take my mic kit. So they are all there. Vocal mics, bass, guitars, that's always in there. For an ideal show, that's 4 vocals and then 3 inputs for the instruments. Then we're almost always going to have kick because I need to hear what Aaron's kick is doing.
Yep.
I think you like that as well. And then in an ideal scenario, we're going to do snare top, rack 1, rack 2. If we add ambient mics, then we're at 16 inputs because then we also have our synths, percussion, and... What's the third one? I always forget what the third track is. Synth, percussion... Oh, third guitar. So Rustin puts down his guitar for half the set, specifically on covers, and he'll grab his mic and move around and be a frontman.
Yep.
Which we love it when he does that. But so then we'd have an extra rhythm guitar to settle in the mix under Joe, because otherwise he does a lot of lead stuff and it'd just be a thin sound.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah, third guitar. And then with all of that, that gets us to 16 channels if we, again, are using like the ambient mics. Technically, we go to 17 because we have a talkback line from front of house that we patch into the back on the talkback input. And then we have some funky routing stuff, which we haven't really used yet, but like we have digital splits of, here's your self vocal, which is uncompressed, has a different EQ, and then there's your vocal for everyone else, which is compressed, so you don't have to worry about fluctuations, so it's more about hearing it rather than hearing yourself. We have that set up, although we haven't really messed with it much.
No ride cymbal mic in our ears. Is kind of where we're going with this.
Yeah,
because my cymbals are loud as shit.
We don't do snare bottom. We don't do hi-hat. We don't do overheads. That is always up to the venue. I have those mics with me. So if they want to do it, I'm saying, okay, cool. I have these. We can use this, or if you have something that you want to put up there, that's fine too. And it's just their call of how much effort they want to put into it and what the room is. Like at Oddfellows, we're definitely not going to use or want cymbal mics in any way.
Right. It's not big enough. Yeah.
Right. And our vocal mics will pick it up. I actually have a push-to-talk switch on my
Got it.
pedal board for my mic because I do so little.
Right. And it just picks up ambient noise. That's smart.
Exactly.
Right.
And so one of the engineers, when we played Brighton, when Aaron was upstage left, I am downstage right. She said, hey, Joe's vocal, who is downstage left, is picking up a lot of cymbals when he's not singing. And so there's things we could do, like we could put an opto gate on there or use a lily pad, but that's just more stuff to deal with.
Right.
So I said, well, if we're ever in that situation again, why don't we just put Aaron upstage right behind me? Because then Joe is furthest from it, Rustin's in the middle, same as either way, and my mic's off most of the time.
Right.
And I've learned to tell engineers that I have that because they've been scared about, like, I just lost the sound. I'm like, oh, yeah, because I'm not stepping on it. Like, don't worry. It's fine.
Right.
Another check in the, like, why are IEMs a good idea? Or like, it's just the flexibility. Yeah. Like, for me, like, it's going to sound exactly the same. And, control, it can be whatever I want it to be. I can pull that thing up on my phone and toggle with it.
I think I'm the only one that uses the iPad.
Yeah.
We all use phones. Rustin has like a 2008 iPod Touch or something.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's just control and flexibility and like moving me around. It's like whatever's clever. Like, again, just, what gives the sound out there, it all, it filters back to like, best performance and how can we give that and, make the people, who spending their evening with us, like how can we make their night a little more enjoyable? And it's probably hearing a little less cymbal in the vocal mic. So I don't know.
It's a learning experience. And because of that too, like with the push to talk, for example, I did that because of the cymbals specifically.
Mm.
And even when you're on the other side of the stage, it makes a huge difference.
Right.
But that's also for my own benefit, not just for the audience, but I don't need all that extra cymbal in my ears either.
Right.
So if my mic's off, that's fantastic. I can focus more on everything else. I don't have to have things cranked as much. It's really helpful. Or, put a high cut on the vocals, which you can do, but then all of a sudden, if you go too far, you're losing the clarity of your vocals. It's a fine line to draw there.
Yeah, that's really interesting to think about, because you're noticing a lot more about what the mics are picking up by having it directly in your ears, right?
Yeah.
Which is exactly 100%. What's being amplified out to the crowd, even though it's a little different sound, but you're hearing it really clearly. Yeah, it's really interesting to think about. I think we've all had the odd experience of hearing a recording of someone and being like, damn. And then you go to their show and you're like, ugh. Because that's it. Like, the studio experience is so different.
Yeah.
Than, the way they practice most likely is so different than what they're doing on stage. I honestly think a piece of that is a lot of people it just sounds so different that it's really hard to put on the same exact show that you did when you recorded wherever you recorded.
And it's like a comfort thing too, like getting in the zone or whatever, and it's just that lets you kind of bring the zone with you almost.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But going back to what I was saying about, I think everyone should do it if they play more than one show a month, which is a lot of the bands in Burlington, like, because they're in multiple bands doing things. Like, please protect your hearing. I'm going to do two things here. One is shameless self-promo. The other is a humble brag involving you, Aaron.
What'd I do?
The first is, if anybody wants in-ear rigs, I'm a dealer for many brands, full warranty, all that. But I'm happy to chat with you about it, even if you don't buy anything from me or don't buy anything at all. I just want you to protect your ears. And if you do buy something, try and get you the best deal you can find. But, I am more than happy to sit down for an hour and chat about in-ear rigs and not get anything out of it aside from hanging out and having a good conversation over lunch. So please feel free to hit me up at MadrockXVX on Instagram, or email is james@james-cross.com. But the second thing is, even if you're not going to do, the extra production stuff we do, like lighting, synth tracks, that kind of stuff, you can still have a massive benefit from ears in clarity and protecting your hearing. That's what Better Things does.
Yep.
And they're on ears for most of their shows. Not all. They're doing one in June. The Sub Sam 10th birthday show at First Republic Brewing. And they've agreed to use wedges for that one because of a very tight schedule from the venue. And we have an hour and 15 minutes to load in the entire PA and the first band. It's going to be fun. We'll
get there.
But it'll be fun. Yeah. Oh, we'll make it happen.
Yeah.
We're not going to have to load in through a basement, go up a very tiny elevator that we're fighting to use with the public as well. Going back to this, Better Things did a Fletcher-free show last year.
Ah, nice.
And it took like 4 hours to get everything going because there was a strict you can't make sound till 6 p.m. thing, which I get, they're open. But also just getting the stuff in took forever because there's one elevator and they wouldn't let us use the front door. And then the public was also using the elevator. So it's like, okay, you have to wait for it to go up and down 3 times and like finally get the next load. And like, and none of this is a diss on Fletcher Free. Like, they are operating an amazing resource. It was just the circumstance of like, hey, this is taking forever because there's multiple roadblocks. So again, like, shout out to them for even doing the show. It was really fun. It was cool. But doing it in an hour 15 minutes is going to be a very different vibe. It's going to be throw and go, get the monitors up, get the vocals up, and then as we progress through the night, add more mics so we can finally record Sub-Sam at the end of the night for their big birthday set. But anyway, so Better Things for that show is going to use wedges because it would just be a lot of extra stuff and we don't have any time to do that.
Yeah.
They're all still using amps, so that is something that can be done. For Taken Alive, I think that show would be almost definitely a hard no. For multiple reasons. But with Better Things specifically, when they did their comeback show at Higher Ground, I was mixing that one. And we did a bunch of rehearsals and all that kind of stuff, and they're not to a click. Like, there's the count in for Getting Laid in New Hampshire had a click. And then it cuts out as I smack myself in the face. Yeah, click on the mic. It literally just counts mark in to start the song and cuts out. And that is the only portion of click because it's just going from the recorded intro to the start of the song. And after the show, Aaron was like, yeah, I thought they were doing the whole show to time code because like it all sounded so tight, it was so cohesive, and the effects. And so I was doing the vocal effects at front of house. I just practiced a bunch. Like, I was literally sitting at home. I had recorded one of the rehearsals and set up all my effects and scenes for every song and all that kind of stuff, and then did that live. So I was like playing the board as I was going, writing the faders at different points, that kind of stuff. But more so, they had that tight, cohesive sound because they were on in-ears. Like, that just, it made it better because they could hear themselves properly. They weren't fighting. They could move around. Brian jumped into the crowd at one point, but he could still hear. Like, and that is so important. And like, we all know the hardcore bands, yeah, you can jump into the pit and scream. Like, that's fantastic. You can jump down there and play. But imagine doing that and being able to hear exactly what you want to hear.
Yep.
Imagine doing that and not having your ears ring at the end of the night. Like, I mean, if your ears aren't already ringing constantly. If they are, sorry, you're out of luck. It's too late to reverse that, but you can prevent it from getting worse. If your ears aren't ringing at all, start wearing earplugs for every show you go to. Start using in-ears for every show you play. And
the sound quality difference. It's like,
yeah.
I'm sorry, but you can spend $100 on earplugs to wear as you're playing with your band. That also kills your sound quality, though. You can't hear each other. I have spent way too much money on earplugs just to wear at concerts because they keep driving me nuts because I can't hear anything clearly. Like, I'm coming here to hear the show, but I don't want to be deaf. So there's a real balance to that. And they get you over that hump. You don't have to worry about the sound quality, and you don't have to worry about your eardrums exploding.
There's also a big thing about that is most of the engineers who are mixing your shows will mix 1 or 2 songs without earplugs and then put in their earplugs.
Yeah.
And so there's certain things like, if you want to hear some detail or something, I'll pull out my earplugs for 30 seconds and hear some detail if I need to adjust an EQ or something. But realistically, these shows are so loud that they are being mixed with earplugs, and it's much quieter at the back most of the time.
Yeah.
So if you're up front, you better be wearing earplugs, and to be honest, keeping in mind that, okay, maybe you're using like, $1 foamies versus $200 custom molded earplugs that the engineer might have, or even like a $40 set of ear easers or ear racers. I can never remember how it's pronounced.
Yeah, there's so many different, right? Yeah. Because the high fidelity earplugs have become a whole thing.
But the mix that you're hearing is probably being mixed on earplugs. I saw one engineer, he had his AirPods in.
Yeah, that's becoming more and more common.
Yeah,
People
he was
keep
using that for reduction because it's
the active noise
supposedly
reduction. Yeah.
flat, which I'm not sure about that. But put some earplugs in if you're going to a show, because the person in the back of the room is probably wearing earplugs too. And a lot of the times I find that the mix sounds better with earplugs in, because they are killing some of that overbearing top end that you find in small rooms where there's vocal mics 2 feet from the drum kit, you know? And it really just makes such a big difference.
You should send me some of your stuff, whether, I don't care if it's from your website or what, just what you recommend for bands. I'm interested just because I like learning about sound stuff. But
absolutely.
Also, I think it's so important. And I know a lot of the bands I talk to end up checking my stuff out. And I can be like, no, if you're interested, check out James Cross's stuff. And I can either link to you or whatever you want to do. Because I'd like to link something like that up on my
I should make like a blog post that
a resource
talks about the basics of in-ears. I mean, there's bunches out there. But there's also a lot of people who get it really wrong.
And there's like information overload. I just want like, this is how you set them up. And this is a good basic setup, because that's it. You start looking to buy something, which the whole internet... If anyone's wondering why Google sucks, it's because Google stopped trying to teach you things and started trying to sell you stuff, which is exactly the same of basically every search engine in the world. So you want to learn something, instead you're looking at buying stuff. I want to learn. Like, I want to know what bands actually need to do and what a good bass setup is for, you know, your standard 3-piece punk band. Like, where do they even start with this stuff? Because I've been in this world for a long time, and in-ears weren't a thing back when I don't know, the not early, but, you know, 2009 or whenever I started playing out in high school bands. That was, like, not a thing. I just never saw that.
Yep. It was only at the biggest levels or the bands who really needed it.
Right.
So, for example, like, if you're doing arenas, you might have had in-ears back in the 90s or late 80s. Might.
Right.
You know, the select few.
Right, which is not your high school, you know, where most of us came from. And most of the bands around here, that's it. There's just, there's a big curve to actually, like, there's a real value to the in-ears. It's not just like a cool piece of gear that you don't really need. Like, maybe you do almost need this. And depending on how serious you are and how much you care about your hearing and all of these questions.
And your voice, too, if you're a singer.
Yeah.
Which I'll get into that in a second. But, like, bands, it's becoming more and more common for a reason. Because it is the way to go. And I know there are some artists that say, I can't do that, I'll never do that. But it really is the way to save your hearing and your voice. Using a couple of examples, I know AFI was using them as far back as 2003. And they needed to, because, and I mean, if anyone doesn't know this about your favorite bands, I'm sorry, but your favorite band's most likely you're playing to a click. AFI absolutely was. Like, they have so much synth stuff, especially after 2006, but in 2003 already. And, but also Enter Shikari. And I think around like 2009, 2010, judging by videos, only the drummer had ears in, but they have so much in their tracks. Like, if their tracks go down, they cannot do a show.
Yeah.
And that's not any diss on them. I love their music. But for us, if our tracks go down, we've had that happen. We just keep playing. It's fun. You know? Like, we can do it without that. But we can add that, like, 2% of ear candy, like the percussion and the synths, and we like that, so we do it. But also, if you're a singer struggling to hear yourself in a monitor mix, one, find a better sound engineer or learn how to project properly. But if you are projecting properly and still can't hear yourself, because this is a problem that a lot of people have if they're doing their own, like, you know, your average band that sets up a show and doesn't know how to mix, because that's not your job. You as a singer can just get a simple Y split and plug it directly into like a Sennheiser G4 or a Shure PSM 300 and get just your vocal directly to your ears.
Yep.
and you will be able to hear yourself. Now, do not turn that up too high, because then you'll sing too softly for front of house.
Right.
But find that
sense.
balance where you can hear yourself at a comfortable level and still get your vocal out over the band. And that will save your voice and your ears, because you won't have to have it cranked. You won't have to have everything else so loud. And that makes a massive, massive difference. As far as, one of the biggest compliments I've ever received mixing a show was for a bit at the Underground. We were doing 3 downstage wedges, but the center wedge would be turned around as a front fill. And this guy was trying to turn it around and point at him. He's like, I'm not going to be able to hear. He's like, no, don't worry. You're going to be able to hear. I said, okay. And at the end of the show, even though he was only coming from the monitors to his left and to his right, not the one directly in front of him, he came up to me and said, I've been playing music for 20 years. That's the first time I could actually hear myself. I was like, yeah. Because I went in and wrung that out and got all those feedback frequencies so I could make you loud enough. And a lot of people just don't do that because they don't know how, they don't know what they're doing. So if you go to a real venue like Higher Ground, Brighton Music Hall, they know what they're doing. But if you're playing little, like 50 cap, 100 cap, you're going to be lucky if they have a monitor.
Yeah, right.
And it's those situations like, oh, cool, I have a Y split on my vocal, boom, done. And that setup would cost you like $900 because it's just the transmitter and a $10 Y split cable.
Right.
So at the very least, do that. And obviously you can't do that for the full band, but it gets cheaper as you scale up. So it might be $900 for one person.
Right. The
then
scalability, if you have that kit in mind where it's not the $5,000, because that's it. Most bands around here don't have $5,000 to drop on stuff. They want it. They're working towards it. But the $900 and adding pieces and parts to get there, they could do that. I think a lot of people, I've heard people say that. They're like, I want in-ears. We don't have the money. Like, we don't even know where to start with it. It's too much to drop immediately. So if you could explain that in this here informational blog post that you're going to write, that would be great.
Let me also just say, though, there are cheaper wireless in-ear units, and you don't want to get those. They all invariably have issues. You're going to experience cutouts. You're going to experience random bursts of noise. Like, whatever it is, you don't want that. And that's not to say that the Shure or Sennheiser units are invaluable. We've had that happen. Like, one show, somebody rubbed up against our antenna, and I got the loudest burst of static I've ever heard. Nobody else in the band heard it. It was just me. But like, I literally remember yelling mid-song because I was just so shocked at what happened. And it was, okay, it happened, That's always going to happen. But yeah, like, the Shure PSM 300, which is like $900, you can split that into dual mono, which is what we do on our G4s. So now, you have 2 people listening for $450. You add a mixer and a split, and a second PSM, and you can have a 4-piece band on in-ears for, let's say you get the Behringer XR18, which I don't recommend. You can get better ones. But if you have a budget, XR18 is like $500, $1,800 for the 2 in-ear units, and then a split, which if you're doing 16 channels, you can get from Seismic for like $300. So you're looking at $2,600, $2,800 with a rack, $3,000 with all the cables.
Yep.
That's, if you want your own mics and all that, which I recommend, you can do that. But you don't have to. You can rely on the venue mics and just say, hey, you patch through our stuff.
Right.
I've seen people say, oh, you don't need an analog split. It's heavy and does this and that. You can use this other kind of split, which just sends outputs from your mixer. Don't do that. A lot of sound guys will say, I'm not taking your post gain. And I've allowed that at times. And then the vocal is coming through and it's just entirely clipped in their signal chain.
Yeah.
And so more and more I'm just saying, no, I will not allow that. If you want your ears, that's fine, but you need to have an analog split or we're not using it. Be careful.
The good thing, though, with, and circling back to this sort of setup becoming more popular over the last 10 years is the barrier to entry is much lower now than it was 10 or 15 years ago.
By like a factor of 10.
from a price standpoint, is this gear available locally for me or online at a price point that's, and there are
And will
there
the
are
sound guy
options.
have seen this before?
Yeah, and I mean, you're dealing with, a dozen or 2 dozen different components. So if you really want to, you'll be able to plug and play with cheaper alternatives to kind of get that feel. I mean, the first thing to start with maybe is a pair of cheaper in-ears, which do exist, and and that's where I started, like with cheap gear, and then you kind of learn, what this can do for you, what it can't do for you doesn't matter to you, and then you can kind of plug and play and keep going, and that's in a more cost-effective, like piece by piece way, so you don't have to deal with some Godzilla threshold for entry, because that's off-putting. I wouldn't, if I had to drop $5,000 on something
Especially
to get started,
when you have no
fuck
idea
that.
How to use it, right?
Right.
Like, not only
Yeah.
is it $5,000, but can we even implement
It's
it?
a
Or is
big
it gonna
investment,
be...
and it's a big, it's intimidating. It can be intimidating for somebody who's interested in saving their hearing and exploring, other like performance options. 100%. But so the good thing is, like, over the last 10 or 15 years, it's become much more accessible. And I think that's the big point. And I mean, neither one of us or the other guys are ever like done learning. We're always iterating and improving. But backtracking, like, there is a place to start that does exist. And it's a one step at a time, little by little, the egg learns to walk.
Good
kind
pun
of a thing.
too. Backtracking.
Oh, I was going to go with one step at a time.
Oh, that one step closer. Everything
Points
you
deducted.
say to me, I'm about to break.
Points deducted. Oh.
Okay, all right. We've been chatting for a while. I don't have the exact timing, but I think it's...
Once we start talking about
yeah.
new metal,
We're ready to break stuff.
done. Okay.
go to your room.
Okay.
Somewhere I belong.
There he is.
All
It's been a while.
So...
That was unintentional. I'm sorry, Becca.
It's closing time. You don't
There
have
we
to go
go.
home, but you can't stay here.
Oh, man. Okay, so Stuck in Motion. Listen to it. Check it out. It's good stuff. What
We
was
will
the...
be playing it.
Oh, EP was Matches.
Yes.
EP's Matches. Check that out. Also good stuff. You are playing at Oddfellows which day?
June 27th. It's a Friday.
Perfect. Friday show, Oddfellows in the New North End. Very cool spot.
Right across from Pingala.
Yes.
Get some
Excited.
food. Come see a show.
Park on the side streets.
Yes.
Learned that last time. Park on the side streets. takenalive.band.com. You have your own website. We'll plug that. But check out the show notes for today. I will, if you make this informational blog post, I will certainly link it up on the show notes page, which is going to be vermonttalks.com/56, which will also link to all of the Taken Alive social medias and things, and Linktree and Spotify, etc., etc. Anything else before we call it quits for the night? Thank you so much, James, and thank you so much, Aaron, for coming and chatting with me.
Thanks for having us and letting us kind of nerd out a bit. And
gonna get
this
yelled
was
at.
awesome.
We're going to get yelled at.
You're going to get yelled at.
Our band is about in-ear monitoring.
Yes. They were like, try not to focus too much on the tech. I was like, if she asks.
Hey, I love in-ears. I've had a deep interest in them, but that's it. I don't have any to play with. I don't know a lot about them, so I appreciate it. And I appreciate the fun chat and the memory road of the emo bands.
That was
And
fun.
the punnery.
Yes, the punishment. Yeah, I'll leave it at this. The in-ears are a big part of letting us do what we do live, which is make people feel something.
Yes.
Like, that's the goal.
Wicked clean. That's like very professional, wicked clean sound. Congrats to you guys. I'm excited to see you play. I will be at the Oddfellows show.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Have
you,
a great
Becca.
day, all listeners. Goodbye. Thanks so much for listening to the end of the show. Subscribe to Vermont Talks on your favorite podcasting platform. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all over the web. Contact Becca at vermonttalks.com if you'd like to be interviewed or if you know someone who should be. Thanks so much to Jason Baker for creating the show music. The views and opinions expressed by the guests are those of the individuals and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Vermont Talks. Any content or statements provided by our guests are of their opinion and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, anyone, or anything. And that's what was new in the 802. Have a great day.